Hello and welcome to Deep Impact, a proud member of the Duff Network where we dive deep into Arbo's most reflective work 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
And that was Ruben Morehouse.
And this is just your regular reminder that the Fanart competition is still going on for a little bit longer. It ends in like a week now, right?
Yeah, I think submissions are due at the end of this week. You know, there's the link in the show notes.
Yep. Yeah. We've long learned
there.
to not try and make up the information. Just go check it from the source. It'll be the most correct. Now on with the show. We're here to talk about Malfeasance 11.7. So if you'll remember, Elliot, Malfeasance 11.6 ended with Peter walking in and being like, hey, I found all these weird symbols. What the heck's going on? And Alexis basically gives it her best try, let's say, to try and distract him. And she makes some good plays, but I don't think it is a success.
No, I was pretty impressed with her ability to do things like, say, oh, everyone could be considered crazy, and all those words could be used. So she manages to not accidentally outright lie, which is 100% what I would do in this situation. I would accidentally just lie. I
don't know. It feels like level 1 practitioner wordplay, though. It doesn't feel like she's making any really great... like last chapter, I think, last chapter, I think it was, we had Rose doing the thing where she was like, oh yeah, somebody in the family told me about this, which I call like level 3 or 4 practitioner wordplay. Alexis is not at that level yet.
How many levels are there? Like, what's the scale that we're dealing with here?
I guess 5?
Okay.
Look, it's not a thought-out scale, so don't focus on it too much.
Okay. Well, if we're talking about Pokemon levels, then it's like level 5 practitioner, you're still not really saying much.
Yeah, I mean, the Cabal has only been practitioners for, at most, 2 months.
A month? Yeah.
Anyway, so Alexis comes up with this excuse where it's like, oh, Granny Rose had an enemy who was in a cult, and so we think if we do these cultist symbols, they'll maybe give them pause. And it's pretty good response. But yeah, Peter's not buying it. And I kind of like the characterization here that we get of Peter as kind of the, I guess, street smart, where Paige definitely seems like the bookworm, and Peter is obviously not that, but still seems quite intelligent. He's able to kind of pick up on things to find the symbols, for example, and he can kind of read Alexis's body language enough to know when she's kind of lying or telling the truth, or that she's scared. So he seems to be doing okay.
Yeah, it actually reminded me of Paige quite a bit. And I mean, Blake actually makes that exact connection and says, this is Paige, but just has walked a different path.
Yeah.
Because, Paige was, the same. She picked up on lots of little details in things people said and the way they said it. So that it felt like Paige, but different.
Yeah.
He is a lazy freeloader and whatever, but there's a reason that he's been able to coast on his natural talent. It's because he's got a fair amount of it.
Yeah, it's interesting to think of them as twins, because I kind of always forget that they're twins, right? But no, they are. And you can kind of feel that through the interactions that we get with Peter this chapter.
Yeah, they've walked different paths, and, who else could we be talking about there? Andy and Eva, of course.
Yes.
They come in later.
They're the only pair of reflections in this story. No, I do like that we're kind of getting more and more of these to contrast, right? Like, obviously, Blake and Rose started out, and then Andy and Eva came in, and we obviously hit that contrast beat pretty hard whenever we talk about them, but now we've got Peter kind of reflected off of Paige/Ellie,
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, so Alexis basically eventually gets to the point of, look, just wait until tonight and you'll see. And Peter seems to kind of reluctantly accept this. He decides he won't do anything too disruptive, although, of course, he's not just going to rest on his laurels, I guess.
He's also not obliged to follow through on anything he says.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to pull out this one bit where, towards the end, after Alexis is sick of dealing with this shit, where she says, I'm starting to see where Rose got to be how she is. I need a damn smoke. And I'll just cut to you, because I know you've pulled out a line that basically hits exactly the same theme. So I'll just cut straight to you and your line.
Yeah, thanks for setting that up for me. Peter says to Alexis, you think it's bad dealing with me? I've had to spend my whole life dealing with a dozen people who are just about as bad as me. And man, that hit me. I think actually even Peter is not the worst of the Thorburns. That honor goes to Uncle Paul, in my opinion. But yeah, like he recognizes that he's a bit of a piece of shit, but his attitude of like, I've kind of done as well as I could given this situation is not 100% true, because Paige and Molly aren't pieces of shit, but it's at least relatively true.
Yeah, I agree. Like, if you're raised surrounded by like a bunch of terrible people, it kind of makes sense that you would grow up to be a bit of a terrible person. But at a certain point, if you're able to self-reflect and admit that, you start, like, I start to be like, okay, well, you're probably mature enough then to start to try and not be shit. You know, like at a certain point, you got to start to take responsibility for yourself. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's fair to say, oh, well, Paige and Molly aren't shits, because it looks like the divorce and that's like the separation of the twins happened when like Peter and Paige would have been like under 10. So, you know, he was essentially raised in a different household. Like, he may have legitimately had it a lot worse than Paige.
Yeah, that's my impression. I mean, you know, like Callan and Kristoff are walkers, I guess, but they definitely don't feel as shit as really the kings of the shit are Ellie, Peter, and Uncle Paul, in my opinion, along with Blake's parents. And Roxanne. She's horrible.
Roxanne's she's horrible in the making. Well, actually, she's pretty well cooked.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it just also got me thinking, like, the fact that Peter and Paige were raised separately, like, who does that? Like, that feels so transactional to split up twins. It's like, well, there's two parents and there's two twins. Like,
yeah, and they're the same.
You know,
so
fuck keeping them together. Yeah.
It's the easiest decision to make because they're the same. So you can just, one gets one and one gets the other.
Like, at least in The Parent Trap, the Lindsay Lohans were so young when they split, they didn't remember each other.
Yeah.
These two, like, know that they're twins. Like, that's just... I mean, well, you know, shocker, it's shit parenting by Paul Thorburn.
Who would have thought? Yeah.
But like, yeah, I guess to circle back to the original point you made, like, I really like that we're bringing in the Thorburns and already talking about, you know, being around shit people and raised by shit people tends you towards being a shit person. Because, you know, and like, there's literally probably over 100 examples of that in Pact. Like, we've got things like the radiation, the way Maggie talks about how goblins made her more goblin-y. Like, in Pact, it's very much what you surround yourself with is what you become. And now we're exploring a more benign example of that with, you know, the shithouse Thorburn family.
Yeah. And as long as it doesn't lead to an Ava redemption arc, I'm pretty happy with it, honestly. Yeah, so Alexis goes off to have her smoke, and Peter's reaction, basically, he confides in the rest of the family that after talking with her, kind of grilling with her, she is scared, and he kind of lends enough weight to that to think, okay, maybe it's not 100% what they're saying, but something is actually going on here, and we kind of need to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And of course the way to do that is to form a Thorburn coalition, which my reaction the first time I read this was kind of like, wait, they weren't already like agreed that they would work together? And of course they're not, because Callan and Kristoff and Catherine are all like, no, fuck you, immediately. Which is great.
Yeah, Roxanne is the only one who goes against her immediate core family group.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I want to judge them for being so bad at like working together and working with each other. But we have just been following Blake and Rose going through this the last few chapters.
Yeah.
It's hard to come down on them too much as shitty Thorburns when Blake and Rose... In fact, you know, I think these guys did better than Blake and Rose. I'm just going to say it.
We've been ascribing Blake and Rose's relationship to kind of like outside means where they kind of have to fight each other because of their position. But maybe it's just that they're Thorburns and they can't work together. Exactly. Maybe there's no spirits going on here at all. So I want to talk about Roxanne because she's actually just a full-on psycho, right? Like Ava level. Like on a 1 to Ava, she's at the Ava scale, basically.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether to think she'll grow out of it or she's gonna get worse.
Yeah, if she's growing into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Blake has that funny little line where he quips about what she's gonna start to lean on when she can't just be a cute little kid anymore. And it's easy to believe that she will double down on, being crazy, especially based on how the chapter ends. Like, I was originally planning on making a joke about how, like, Eva and Roxanne would be the ultimate team up, but we already kind of see how they interact at the end of the chapter.
Yeah. Like, obviously she can't lean on her cuteness, I guess, at the end of the chapter, and so her reaction is to pull out her knife and start stabbing, which is insane to think about for a 12-year-old.
Yeah, who just, where'd she get the knife? She must have already had it on her.
Yeah, she's had it the whole time, is the implication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, Blake is kind of preparing with the rest of the cabal for tonight when things are really going to kick off, and he kind of notices Ellie skulking around. And true to her word from last chapter, she basically just starts stealing shit and popping it into a bag, which justifiably makes Blake start to get a bit angry.
Yes, particularly because of what she's taking. But there's an interesting bit just before he goes on, like, Operation Fuck with Ellie, where he more thoroughly dives into these documents the Thorburns have compiled. And, I mean, like, the interesting thing is how much cooperation there's been here. There's different, like, sets of different handwriting.
Yeah.
They've clearly all gone through it multiple times. Like, this is a really great example of cooperation. And I mean, as Blake points out, it's designed to fuck over another family member, so you can't really give them too much credit. But it just sort of goes to show that when they work together, the Thorburns aren't incompetent. Like, it's like their greatest enemy is themselves, really, as a family. It just gets me more excited for the idea that some of them might actually, given how this chapter ends, I think it's safe to say that the extended Thorburn family is going to be in amongst it now, because like, some of the innocents have been attacked, so even if they don't get awoken, which I still think would be hilariously awful, like, the family is going to be involved to some extent now, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
We've looked through some of the comments for this chapter, and I saw a lot of comments that were just theory crafting about how the hell they could explain all of this to the Thorburn family. Which, I mean,
there's no way to do it.
Yeah,
there's no way to do it that doesn't have the family at least somewhat invested in finding out what the fuck's going on in this town. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, so things are going off the chain a bit. So yeah, one of the things I really liked is there's this, 3 or so paragraphs where Blake sees Ellie continue upstairs from the 3rd to the 4th floor, which is the floor where the barber's attic is. And he's kind of like, oh fuck. But before he has time to really do anything, she's come back downstairs again. Because of course there are protections there. And in the time it takes for this to happen, you kind of think, no, there'd be protections there. But I just love these, like, sudden 2 or 3 paragraphs of, like, this has actually just gone in the worst possible direction for a second before it pulls back in.
Yeah, well, it really highlights something Blake talks about, like, quite a few times throughout the chapter, which is how, like, confined he feels. And I mean, it's his own fault. He's part of the reason most of the reflective surfaces got busted up. But that's sort of something that, especially towards the end of the chapter, is becoming a real problem for him. Is he doesn't have many points he can move around in the house, and this just really highlights that, because obviously there's no reflective surfaces in the barber's room.
Yeah, I would hope not. Yeah, definitely. The walls are kind of starting to close in, even though he's gotten access to the house again. It feels like he's kind of teetering on the edge.
Yeah, and obviously, this is Blake, so that's a big deal, because, like, freedom of movement is his whole thing. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, so the other thing that this made me wonder was that Ellie kind of seems to instinctively steal things that have sentimental importance. Not only those things, but that's definitely what seems to happen. And it kind of makes me wonder if the sentimental importance that these things have can affect her, like, awareness. Like, is she more likely to notice things with heavy sentimental value? I don't know if that's a thing or not, but it feels like it could be.
So my understanding was, if you were unawoken, I don't know, if you're a muggle, you're sort of immune to all the spiritual shit in Pact to a large extent. Like, things like that would kind of go past you. So I think if it is spiritual interference, for me, it would only make sense if it's like bad karma for like Alexis and Ty and stuff that is pushing her in that direction. Like it's not anything to do with her, because I think innocence, it's sort of meant to be, Pact could be our world and we're all just innocents, like we don't know. So I'm more inclined to believe that if anything, it's representative of bad karma for the Cabal.
Yeah, I could see that
more than anything for Ellie.
Yeah,
but yeah, it could just be the reason, part of the reason those things are valuable is because they're rare or expensive.
Which obviously applies in the Muggle world.
Yeah, exactly. And like, something that comes up actually a fair few times this chapter is like how observant Peter is specifically. Like I know we're talking about Ellie now, but like Peter notices Blake speaking a couple times and stuff. Like he can't quite make it out, but it's like, I guess now I'm just wondering, is that a sign that he's just a very observant person and his brain doesn't filter as much, so he notices that stuff, or is it a sign that he's leaning into the world more, like he's starting to clue in a bit, or maybe it's both, like, it's Pact.
Maybe it's both, is a pretty good motto for Pact.
Yeah. But yeah, like, I don't know. I wonder if this is maybe a subtle foreshadowing or something, just the way it feels like Peter is seeing through the veil a little bit more than everyone else.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, we've compared him to Paige a bunch, and Paige obviously, is diving headfirst into the world over in Toronto, so it makes sense that Peter might be leaning in the same direction.
Yeah. I mean, maybe even Paige's diving headfirst is causing Peter to kind of get slowly pulled towards it as well. I can see that being an extension of the ponds, the stones falling into the pond metaphor that I really quite love that Isadora did many arcs ago. Yeah,
well, I mean, to be fair, we don't know. We have no idea what these guys all think is up with Paige, right? Like,
that's true.
She hasn't been mentioned at all, which is I would say is weird, but this family is not the reminiscent type, I guess.
I would assume
gather around the fire.
I would assume they just think, because she's at the university that Isadora teaches at, right? So yeah, that's a pretty good cover story. I'm just at university.
Yeah, but she's doing law there, and it's like, if you're doing this whole legal play thing, you'd think the law student would be top of your list of family members to bring. Yeah. Although she's last in the inheritance list, so maybe when she told them to fuck off, they were like, yeah, fair.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, so Ellie follows Blake follows Ellie around on her thief's journey, I suppose, and gets increasingly angry until eventually he uses sympathetic magic to move the bag that Ellie is hiding her stolen goods in, and kind of hides it up on a shelf in a wardrobe so that she can't find it, which is great. It's so fun.
Well, I love this because it's like retroactively a great play, because she's basically gathered all the things that are worth protecting for him and put them in one like easy to hide location.
Yeah.
So it's like a big brain play, accidentally.
Yeah. But I don't think Blake. Obviously it was an accident, right? Blake doesn't have that thought, and he the reason he ultimately acts is he's out of anger here, right? Like, we get many beats of him getting angrier and angrier, and then eventually we get this moment where he reaches in for a spirit to pull this trick, and the spirit comes like excited and ready to go, which gives me very skeevy vibe of these spirits actively pushing him towards his angry Boogie Blake kind of form.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's been explicitly mentioned that is what they are going to be doing. But what's definitely interesting here is, assuming he is right and it was like quivering with excitement, it very much suggests that the spirits are starting to get on board with this. And like, to me, that seems like a turning point. Like, that's going to be cementing this as his MO. Like, he's going to become somebody who is gathering and attracting spirits that are wanting to be yanked out and used for sympathetic magic. Because, like, from what we've seen, all these boogeyman stuff is sort of, it's all self-perpetuating cycles. Like, what you do reinforces the spirits within you and stuff. So this is him starting to become this, like, and you know, I guess it'll become easier and easier for him to do, presumably, because all the spirits inside him are going to be like waiting for their turn to get shoved into whatever thing he's pulled into the mirror realm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It definitely seems like he's pushing along that self-perpetuating cycle with these spirits. Because
I mean, I was just gonna say it's very Blake.
Yeah.
For his MO to be sympathy magic, like I like that.
Yeah, you're right. It's very much like physically taking parts of himself and giving them up in order to do his things.
Like, you know, it's such a Blake way to be a boogeyman. I love
it. So Ellie eventually gives up on her ghost bag that has vanished, and heads downstairs. And downstairs, things really start popping off because Blake sees Ava and Andy. And before Blake can really signal anybody, they kind of kick into gear, immediately taking down Ellie and then kind of relatively quickly moving through the other Thorburns and incapacitating them.
Yeah, do we know Andy and Ava's surname? Because it should be Wick. Because, like, this is John Wick style smooth operating. They just... like, they're a fucking force in this. Yeah. It really... all the talk we've had about how fearsome they are, and you really sort of start to see it. They just obliterate these guys.
Yeah, no, they really do take them down very quickly. We get a bit more Psycho Ava. There's this line where Blake watches. He thinks, "I watched as she stuck out her tongue, then bit it. Her eyes closed, her head rested against the corner of the wall, almost as if she were meditating or in a daze," which is so crazy. Like, she does this, like... all right, intentionally inflict pain on myself to focus, and then I'm just going to fucking go John Wick on these Thorburns and kick the shit out of this 12-year-old girl.
Yeah, because, like, when I read this, my first thought was, like, oh, is she doing some little spell or something? And then it's like, no, wait, she's a witch hunter. That they can't do that. Like, they don't even seem to rely on magical artifacts very much. Like, it's you know, shit with runes in it at best. So I guess, like, she just literally has to bite her tongue to patiently wait against the wall.
I kind of see it as her, like, the way she focuses is, okay, the most efficient way for me to focus is just cause myself some pain, that'll sharpen my mind, let's do it. Like
get the adrenaline pumping.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, yeah. Either way, like, crazy.
Yes. So Blake basically tries his best to... get in their way. He tries to attack Ava, but she basically effortlessly takes out the reflective surfaces available to him, and so all he can really do is head upstairs to warn the Cabal, and they just lock themselves in Rose's bedroom, leaving the Thorburns to their own devices.
I mean, let's not pretend the Thorburns wouldn't do the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love this. I hadn't considered using Andy and Eva to attack these guys, and it's like, I said last episode that I thought having, like, innocent meat shields was such a good plan because it would stop pretty much everything. But, like, of course, this is something it does not help with at all. Like, this is a perfect first wave attack because it basically completely obliterates, presumably the Cabal. Like, I assume that's what they're going for, as well as all the innocents. Like, they're so fucked now. Like, I'm totally on board with what you were saying last chapter now about, like, how fucked everything is, because I hadn't considered these two. And as soon as I came in, I was like, oh no, Ruben was right, they're fucked.
Yeah. Ty points out for everybody here playing along at home that witch hunters can kill people, even innocents, which kind of steps up the stakes. I mean, we kind of already knew this in the back of our heads, but it's nice to have Ty remind us that, yeah, Andy and Ava could actually just kill some Thorburns and it would be fine for them, especially considering what happens at the end of the chapter where Ava comes pretty close to killing Roxanne.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, there's so much to be afraid of with these guys because all the sort of, you know, so much of this world everything's been constructed by the spirits / author to, like, have all these rules so people are playing with their hands tied behind their back and it makes for, you know, better storytelling and stuff. But, like, the witch hunters are this exception where it's like, no, they can just go around shooting people. Yeah. And, like, you know, karmically or whatever, they're fine.
Yeah, they don't have to play by the rules.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, when you've spent so much of the book setting up these rules and then you just have two characters who are like, nah, fuck them.
Yeah.
Like, it makes them so much more formidable.
Yeah, it's good. So Blake heads downstairs to try and help the Thorburns, and they're all kind of freaking out, not knowing what the hell's going on. Peter is notably absent still from his walk. We'll see. We don't really see what happens to him now, but maybe he's already gone, I assume, is what we would assume there.
I think there's an implication that he may have been taken out on the way in, but
Yeah.
I mean, so it's either going to be that or it's going to be, the wild card that saves the day.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see him doing that, I guess.
Maybe not on purpose. It
True.
could just be a distraction.
But so Blake kind of heads downstairs and is trying to figure out how he can help the Thorburns without, revealing himself. But before he can figure that out, there's an explosion, like a flashbang kind of deal, and the Thorburns are disoriented, and Ava just comes through and cleans them all up very effectively.
Yeah, they sort of squabble right to the end too, which is such a nice embodiment of them as a group. That they're kind of bickering and arguing right up until the flashbang goes off.
Yeah. And this is the first time that we actually see the witch hunters in action, right? We haven't actually seen them. We saw Andy be a nuisance to Blake after that time magic spell.
That wasn't action though.
No, but it was fun.
It was just him. No, yeah, very different though. Yeah,
and we've obviously had the interlude where they kind of where Andy described what they had done, and obviously it was pretty badass. But they're very effective, I guess is the best word for it. Ava is obviously as terrifying as we knew she would be. But Andy is obviously quite cold as well. Andy full-on tasers Christoph, who's like, 14, 15?
At best.
And is very nonchalant about like, yep, I'll just taser this child. And then Ava can't let herself be outdone, so she beats the shit out of a 12-year-old.
And I mean, of course, like, I think that's kind of the interesting thing about us seeing them for the first time in action. It's just against innocents, like against humans. And I think that really highlights sort of the ruthlessness, as you said, particularly like Andy, that it's just kids. Like, if he's walking up and tasing like a fairy, glamming up as a kid, we'd all sort of be like, yeah, fair enough, it's a fairy, glamored as a kid, whatever. This is like, no, this is just an innocent kid, and he knows that, and he's just going to tase him, no worries. Like, it really comes to what we were talking about just after their interlude about how maybe these two aren't that different. And then obviously we have Roxanne, who fucking I mean, we've already touched on it. Like, she has this knife, and she's such a fucking little psycho. And I think her and Ava need to make up because they'll be best friends.
Yeah, I could definitely see Roxanne as like Ava's prodigy.
Yeah, exactly. The apprentice.
So I don't know. Something that was interesting in the comments to me was there was a lot of people going back and forth on feeling kind of gratification at the Thorburns kind of getting a bit of their just desserts, but also the amount of force used by Andy and Ava here is so excessive that you feel bad for these characters who I think have done nothing good in this story, but even so, you don't, this is like too much.
Yeah, well, because this is not a response to any of the shit things they've done. Like, they weren't actively doing anything shit right in this moment. They're very much just collateral damage.
They were doing minor shit things, I guess.
Well, yeah. No, I agree. Like, there's something a little bit cathartic about the fact that it's happening to the Thorburns rather than, like, I don't know, anyone nice. Like, if it was Maggie's dad's, you'd feel so much worse.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But, like, when it's the Thorburns, you're sort of like, oh, I mean, they are shits, but it's just the way Andy and Eva do it. You're like, ugh, like, full on.
Yeah. But having said that, I mean, they're here with a mission, and apart from Ava going nuts on Roxanne, especially Andy, he doesn't seem to use excessive force, I guess. He there's a bit where Ellie is like, oh, don't... No, sorry, I'm getting Ellie and Roxanne mixed up. Roxanne is like, don't hit me, and he's like, oh, I'll just tase you, and that's when Roxanne stabs him, or attempts to stab him. I don't know. There's no winners. I mean, there's no good people in this situation, I guess.
Yeah, no, but like that little moment really highlights the difference between Andy and Eva as well, because like Andy is coldly ruthless. Like, he doesn't seek out violence, but he will just like, tase a 12-year-old.
Yeah, he actually doesn't hesitate at all.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas like Eva goes into this flying rage after Roxanne tries to stab him. Like, she's angry, crazy, ruthless. Like she she was blinded by anger. She's the Blake, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so then obviously I think, that's basically where the chapter ends, with the implication that they're about to head upstairs and take on the Cabal, or take out the Cabal, more likely.
So something you just said started me on a train of thought, where you touch on Ava kind of freaking out based on anger, and the other thing that happens this chapter is Blake getting angry enough to do sympathetic magic at kind of risk to revealing himself on Ellie, right? Do you think that there's an intentional comparison being drawn between Blake's acting out of anger and Ava's?
Maybe a little. I mean, I don't think we're meant to think that they're on the same level, because I think what Blake did is fairly objectively good.
Yeah.
He got a bit of energy out of spooking Ellie, but again, she was in the middle of robbing from people. It's hard to feel sympathy for her.
Yeah.
So, whereas Eva's was like kind of objectively not great. Like after Roxanne was down, she was still kicking her, I think is what's mentioned.
Yes,
so,
and had to be pulled off of her.
So there's maybe some similarities, but I think I think it would be unfair for someone to say that, they're on the same level.
Yeah, I think that is fair. Yeah, and that's kind of where the chapter ends. They go to deal with the rest of the Cabal, and we'll see how that goes next time, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we've only really got Evan and maybe Peter and / maybe Blake, who can do anything at this point.
Well, and Alexis, Tiff, and Ty, right?
Oh, I mean, yeah, they'll be there.
You don't think they'll do much?
Against Andy and Eva, not really, no.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. They do feel pretty unstoppable, but we'll see. I'm sure we'll find a way to stop them and get back in time for tea.
I mean, it's just going to be a matter of what it costs, right? Like,
yeah.
What dumb shit is Blake going to have to do to stop them?
Yeah.
Find out
next time. Yeah. Before we wrap up the show, though, I wanted to dive through some comments, because we're getting to the point where things are really going off the rail, and I love reading the community's reaction to that as it happened 5 years ago. I pulled out a comment that I really liked by a user called Innominate, and this user Innominate basically pointed out the similarities between Blake, or the boogeyman that Blake is becoming, and Barbatorum, who we kind of theorize at this point pretty strongly was used to create Blake from Rose, right?
The implication from Eamon's interlude makes it like very heavily implied that the Bible was involved in creating Blake and or Rose. Like, it'd be kind of crazy at this point to find out the Bible was not involved in the process that made Blake to some extent.
Yeah. So, obviously reflection tricks are a big similarity. Blake is obsessed with the hyena, which kind of matches Barbie's obsession with the sword. The hyena even prevents healing when you're cut with it, which is something that Barbatorum's wounds also do. And so Innominate kind of extrapolated this out to say, is Blake like part Barbatorum moat here? Which maybe is a little bit too far, but there's definitely some it definitely feels like Blake is a bit more tainted by his demon dad than we might have initially thought.
Yeah, and I mean, I talked earlier in this chapter how we've said that, there's so much about, as we're talking about the Thorburn family, and Pactus talks so much about what you're around and where you come from impacts who you are. So like that would make sense if there's some intentional imagery that's meant to line up between those two there. I can see it. I hate it, but like, it's one of those thanks I hate it moments reading that comment. I've pulled out some bits from a series of comments that was started by a user called Bart, like Bart Simpson, but without the Simpson.
But it was Bart Simpson still?
It probably was.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And so Bart just sort of brought up, Bart went back and looked at some of Blake's visions from 1.1, which is something I did like a couple of arcs ago now, but there's definitely probably more to glean. Well, honestly, it just raised more questions for me. I think like every time I go back to there, I just have a different set of questions, or like the same number. But Grinvader, user point noticed an interesting trend, which is in the vision in 1.1, Mara had a kid with her, like a child with her, And then obviously in since Mags's interlude, we've seen her take the form of a kid. And it was actually, Grinvidir points out that in Arc 2, in the council meeting, Mara was described as middle-aged, whereas she was older in 1.1. So I think basically the theory here is that, this is how Mara stays immortal, I guess, is she's kidnapping kids or something and stealing their bodies. And Grinvader even suggests that maybe the dolls in the house are all the little girls whose bodies she snatched, which is horrifying and makes sense. So I love it. So yeah, there was a lot more on the whole Visions thing, but I feel like it was all kind of rampant speculation, tinfoil stuff that I was just like, I don't know, and I just have so many questions reading it. But this one, I was like, yeah, I'm sold on that.
Yeah, cool. I quite like that too. I don't know if we'll get that confirmed, but it's a fun note.
Yeah, I think Mara might come back into the story at some point, just because I'm waiting for the other Corvidae issue to drop. Corvidae just disappeared, and I want him back because he was my favorite. He was so terrifying, and I want to see more Corvidae, and he was clearly linked to Mara, so I'm hoping the two of them will make another appearance.
Yeah, actually, Briar Girl and Crone Mara have both been relatively absent from all this lordship goings on, right? They've obviously shown up. Briar Girl has shown up in a few meetings. Crone Mara, I don't think we've seen since Mags's interlude, have we?
I think she was mentioned as being present in that council meeting where everyone was declaring whether they were going for the lordship or not.
Okay. Yeah, but they haven't made any plays, and I don't think they're not going to. Not plays for lordship, but just plays to fuck everyone over.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go for lordship, but you can go for claiming your stake or your territory under whoever's going to be lord, right? That's sort of what Mags has done, but she managed to do that with everyone.
Yeah, whereas, and there was a bit of that with Briar Girl and Blake before he went to Toronto, but it definitely seems like Mara has been outside of that system a lot. So I wonder if that's the role that she'll continue to play.
Yeah, can't wait to find out.
Yeah, and maybe we'll find out next chapter. But that's it for us this episode. Thanks for joining us, everybody. If you want to leave us your comments on what you think of this story 0 years ago as we're going through it, the place to do that is in the discussion thread, which will be linked down in the show notes.
Yes, and of course, if you want to experience more than Pact, head over to doofmedia.com. There's a bunch of other shows on Doof. In fact, we've got the book club coming out on Friday. So, I mean, it's not a super long book, so maybe you could get through it. It's on The Black Company. I've been really enjoying it, so it's not too late, but you're probably cutting it pretty fine. So go out there, read The Black Company, and come back and hit up the book club.
Yep. We also just released a new episode of Media MD, which is the other show that we do on the Doof Media Network. That was a few days ago. And we'll be talking about a TV show called Derry Girls in 2 weeks-ish, which I highly recommend everyone check out because I think it's a very slept-on comedy. So check it out, and you can hear what we have to say about it a little bit in the most recent episode of Media MD, or more in the next episode of Media MD. If you want to leave us your comments outside of Reddit as well, you can find our Twitter, which is @MediaMDPodcast.
And of course, if you love Doof and Deep Impact and everything we're doing, please consider heading over to patreon.com/doofmedia, because we're entirely funded by our patrons, and so every dollar helps.
Yeah. Actually, if you donate at $5 a month or up, you have access to the Doof and Chill streams, which is a monthly live stream where all the Doof hosts and the patrons hang out and do a different thing. We actually just had one again a few days ago. So the full VOD of that is out if you are a $5 and up patron. You can check it out. We did some debates where we debated big topics and solved none of them. But it was fun, just a fun kind of discussion.
Yeah, no, it was just a good chat with everyone. Absolutely. And of course, Wildbow has a patron, patreon.com/Wildbow. So, go give him some money. He'll keep writing all these stories, and then we all win. Yeah. Yep. Pretty clear set of steps there. Easy to follow. So go do it. No excuse not to. So thanks for joining us, folks. And our next episode will be on 11.8. That will be coming out on Friday the 27th. So we will see you then. See ya. Bye.